Good afternoon, everybody. While people are still joining us, allow me just to welcome you all and, of course, start by wishing you all and us in the room. Well, I don't know how happy, but definitely a good World Environment Day. Today we celebrate 5th of June, World Environment Day. And with the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion, we decided to celebrate environment. And you know that the topic this year is really about climate action, with a very practical example on how sustainability can come to reality. And we have invited a special speaker, accompanied also by his vice president. It's my pleasure to introduce Dario Casalini, founder and president of Slow Food, with also the founder and vice president of Slow Fiber, Marco Bardelle. Why slow fiber? Well, all of you have heard of fast fashion, slow fashion. You have also heard of slow food, but you never heard before maybe of slow fiber. And that's a very important concept and a movement. It's a sustainable fashion movement that prioritizes quality, craftsmanship, ethical production, and environmental responsibility over the speed and volume of fast fashion. So when it comes to environment, when it comes to climate, but also when it comes to health, and when it comes to labor, this is a very important and crucial new concept. But you know, the Slow Fiber is also an association that brings together textile companies that operate in compliance with the principles that slow food applies to food: good, healthy, clean, and fair, to which they add long lasting value, and they believe in a production model in harmony with people and the planet. Now, we always say what we would like to do, right? What will be good to do, what we are looking forward. Now I'm going to pass the floor on to Dario, who is really someone who is walking the talk. It's not just talking, he's really doing it. And this is why that was important, also to boost a bit our morale, because sometimes, especially in this period of time, we get a bit depressed when we look at the environmental agenda around. So there are also good news. So today we celebrate the good news, and Dario is really good news. Over to you, Dario, and welcome. Welcome to you, and welcome to Marco, and thank you really for joining this event of the UN Alliance here at the Palais in Geneva. So, and I love the logo, let me tell you, because it's really telling a lot. Over to you.
Thank you, everybody, for your time and for your attention. The idea is very simple, as Paola pointed out. The idea was to bring the philosophy of slow food into a different sector that is even more negative impactant on the earth and from a social point of view, that is textile. So our idea was to put together some companies. So far, we started in Italy, but the idea, and we come on it later maybe, is to start this movement everywhere in the world, because obviously our values are common values that can be applied everywhere. You see here a couple of books that were our manifesto. The first one was published in 2021 in Italy, thanks to Slow Food Publisher, and the other one was the French translation that was published in 2024. Now we are working on the English version, so soon we will have the English version. The person that we must be really thankful to is Carlo Petrini, that passed away just a few days ago and was the founder of Slow Food. He believes in our movement, in our network, and he understands that the idea of moving the same values to another sector can be really helpful. Here I put a couple of logos only. He was the founder of Slow Food, indicates a university that is a Pollenzo University that put together everything everything that is important about agriculture and human health under an approach of One Health that is now the UN approach as well, but has been one of the founding elements of slow food. Very quickly, what is slow fiber, or why slow fiber? Here, I just made a list of all the, what Paola said, let's say the wrong side of the economic system that we are facing. I go very quickly because you know everything, but the idea is that all of these aspects for me and for us of slow fiber are linked, can be put together, and we need a solution to them. The idea is really to make a cultural shift toward a completely different model of production and consumption. And the first very strong idea behind slow fiber is that we have to modify them at the same level. So we cannot wait for the consumer or the market to have a demand towards slow fashion items, or on the other way around, we cannot ask the production to do better or green and slow products without the market side, the consumer side. So the idea is that both models need to be modified at the same time. The idea is very simple, and it is a network, as I said, of more than 40 companies now. Probably we are 45 next week. We will be. And the idea is, and our payoff is very simple, is to say a textile product should not be only beautiful, but is beautiful only if it is also good, healthy, clean, fair, and long-lasting. We will see in a while that behind all these words, of these keywords, there is a list of KPIs, or key performance indicators, that help us in measuring how good, healthy, clean, fair, and long-lasting we are, both on the production model. So some of them are related to the company, to the process, the production process. Some of them are related to the products. But the idea is that, and we will deepen all of them, we need to see what is behind the aesthetic side of the fashion. The idea is also that this kind of approach can be applied everywhere and in every sector. The key point is that for our perspective, we don't need no more, let's say, entrepreneurship or initiative that offer beautiful products but with negative externalities behind. We want to be, through very quick clarification, we want to be comprehensive, and so with these 5 values, we want to cover all the aspects of sustainability, and so both the social, the economic, the supply chain, and the environment side. And secondly, we don't want to be certificators. So we have too many certifications yet. So the idea is to say, let's take a look behind the certification again, and let's place the certifications within the single values according to their scope. And then let's take a look to the substantial aspect of the production. Here, very quickly, you know everything about fashion, so I will skip all these aspects, but the idea is that we have a very strong attention to what we eat, and we still have less awareness about what we dress, or which textile we use for our furniture in our houses. And the idea is quite strong, because you know that you eat 3 times a day, but you are into textile 24 hours a day, because it can be a tissue, can be a towel, can be a couch, can be a chair, can be a garment or an underwear, but you are always in contact with a textile product. And it's strange that we don't take care about the production chain behind these products. Beautiful, we don't define beautiful, obviously, because it's for us an umbrella value that we think is our tool for happiness, and so is a fundamental right. So we search for beautiful products every day, and it's fundamental, but we can define beauty for everybody. So the idea is, let's take a look to the substantial value of beauty. That must be for us good, healthy, clean, fair, and long-lasting. Which is here very quickly. I show you which are the companies, but I will skip this. Then you will see later, or you can see on our website. which are our vision, mission, and our main purpose. First of all, we want to make a productive and cultural change in the textile industry. So the idea is that any technology, any innovation, any law, any legislation that is fundamental can be alone the solution of the problem we are facing now in the economic system and in the fashion system particularly. So the idea is let's promote a change in this model of consumption and production. Second aspect is, and the mission is towards three main aspects. So towards the market, so the consumer awareness, towards the companies that has the same, let's say, share with us the same values, and toward the new generation, because the idea is that we want the new generation, and now I'm more optimistic in taking a look to the new generation on the Environmental Day, because they are really open and they want to know what is behind the production. We have the chance to teach the slow fiber philosophy in many universities in Italy, so in Turin, in Rome, and many other places, and we always found a very open acceptance of this model. Very quickly, which are the three main missions? First of all, the idea is to promote, as I told you, a new ethics and culture of consumption. So we need a consumer, as the new Green Deal in Europe pointed out very, very clearly, a new responsibility and awareness in consumption models. So we need to reduce for sure volume, quantity, and waste, because all of them are linked together, and we have now a huge waste of resources and of energy, both in production and after the use at the end of life of the product. Secondly, we need to involve all the companies that share our values, and so they want a comprehensive approach to the sustainability, let's say, topics, both on the environmental and social side, because they are completely linked. There's no ecology without social equality, you know. Thirdly, we want to attract the young generation into manufacturing. So the idea is to say we cannot have a continuous delegation from the Western world of the global North, if you want, the richest country, to the South, to the global South, in producing and disposing also the waste, because the both issues are always together. And finally, again, engage other companies outside the slow fiber movement to let's say, share our vision and adopt a new production model. In order to obtain all these targets and goals, we define, as I told you, some KPIs. I won't go into details explaining all of them because they are hundreds, but the idea is that we want to measure and to find a new way, even to experiment, to test a new way in assessing how clean, good, long-lasting, fair, and healthy we can be. And so the idea is that for each values, we have a set of KPI that is compulsory. So everybody needs to respect and to be compliant with. And another set within the same values that is, let's say, our impact and our approach. So, okay. Let's go a little bit into detail. So first of all, beautiful, we'll skip this because, again, for us, beauty is just, let's say, an umbrella idea to define our right to happiness, to be very clear. And so we need to perceive this value not only as a egocentric or individual value, but as a collective value. So our idea is to say we cannot say that a product is beautiful if this product in production or during its use or final disposal as a waste has external negative impact on social or environment topic. The first value, so hence, is the good. For us, good, and this is a first big issue, big difference, sorry, between us and slow food. Is not in the food you speak about good, putting together taste and healthiness. Here, good is a completely different values. For us, is the supply chain. So the idea that a supply chain is made of, as the word clearly expressed, little rings linked together, and we cannot lose any one of them. So the idea is to say, let's take a look to the territory. And so, for example, one fundamental requirement we ask for is to have the production, at least one step of production in the original territory where the company was born. And if there were some delocalization, the idea is to bring together all the pieces of the companies or the holding. Secondly, the idea of having a partnership between us, and so not only to apply on a simple supplier model, but to take care of the partnership in terms of payment terms, in terms of quality of the production and the supplying, and the like, transparency, traceability, and financial stability. Philosophically speaking, if you want, the idea behind this is really a transition from animal aspects to a vegetable aspects. And the idea is very simple. You know that we are animal, our solution is always movement. And so the idea is that when we have a problem, normally we go somewhere else. The localization has been the pillar of the recent fashion industry. And moving, we need, as an animal, means also to escape predator and to, on the other way around, to find food. Market for us are designed on an animal perspective. So market are competitive, quite aggressive. You have predators and preys and the like. If you take a look to the plant kingdom, so to another system, we found a completely different solution, because here you cannot move, so a plant cannot move. It can produce by itself its own food, and its way is not movement and competition, but is collaboration and adaptation. This seems very stupid, again, very simple, but imagine to move and to shift an entire system from a strongly competitive one to a very collaborative one. And we are really experimenting it among us. As low fiber, we cover basically all the supply step, so from the fiber to the final products, and we are experimenting successfully a very strong collaboration between us, where collaboration means also specialization in some very niche or specific production. You know, plants are connected by mushroom filaments on their roots that exchange communication and nutrients among even different species. That is incredible from an animal perspective. And so here, very simply, the idea is to say, let's try to move to another system, to another way of thinking that represent, by the way, 80% of the biomass of the planet. So maybe the winning model is not ours, so the animal one, but can be another one. So very quickly. Then let's go to the value of clean. That is very simple and express the idea of environmental impact. So the idea here is any solution that we use to reduce our impact. We know that every production has an impact. So here we won't say that one fiber is better than another. So we are open to everything, but we want everything to be done in the right way. So with the best reduction, the best solution in reducing the environmental impact. So you have the energy side, you have the type of fiber you use, you have all the certification that are used to express the recycled content of a fiber, Forest Stewardship Council for the forestry, so the idea of using viscose or any fiber coming from artificial fiber coming from wood pulp and to replant the forest and so on. You know everything about this. The only aspects we are very, let's say, we pay attention is that, and here I go very quickly because you know everything. We tend to think about the climate change as the only problem, but you know that limits, the planetary boundaries are 9. And so the idea is that if we take seriously the environmental aspects, we need to take into account all of them. So the idea is don't focus only on climate change, carbon neutrality and the like. That is fine, but it's not everything. We need absolutely to consider chemistry. So you see the novel entities. We have to consider the phosphorus and the azote, and the nitrogen, the nitrogen cycle, and you have to consider also the consumption of water, fresh water and land. Moreover, and finally, the biodiversity. Biodiversity, again, we always think about extinction of species, but the most dangerous, let's say, direction we are still running is the functional loss of biodiversity. That means to get rid of the ecosystem services that nature so far give us for free. And at some point, we need to pay for them. So the idea to consider the natural capital and the ecosystem services into account, both at the local level, so at the microeconomic level and at the macroeconomic level, for us is fundamental. Another aspect that for us is a pillar is trying to, you know, the overshoot day picture that you see every year, and every year is worsening. But the idea that we need really to take seriously the idea of not running through an endless growth system, whereby we are now using, you know, 1.7 planets because the extraction rate is running much faster than the regeneration rate of nature, and the idea of even giving and returning to the nature no more than the waste that the nature can dispose without any harmful consequence. So the idea of a steady state instead of a unlimited, endless growing. And this is always a very tough, let's say, argument topic at the political and economic level. But the idea is we don't need, and we really believe that we don't need to grow forever. We need to substitute models. So to stop models based on quantity, volume, and waste towards model that can, as this equation between extraction, regeneration, and waste disposal in a proper dimension. I will skip the next because we have we are running out of time a little bit, no, because there are many things to say. But here I'm compacting a 48 hours course at the university in 20 minutes. So forgive me. But for example, for me, this is another key idea. Here I put some example, but the idea is we cannot believe in a growth measured as we do now. So the idea is we need other measurement, and it's what we are still testing and experimenting, because any efficient, any innovation in the history of humankind led to an increase in consumption. It's crazy, but we have hundreds of examples here. Can be light, can be washing, can be cars, can be whatever you want. Now with the digital revolution, you will have an incredible need of energy. So we have to face how to deal with it, even in the, for example, to keep a digital product passport available for years, no? Linked to a certain fashion product. And so the idea of not relying on a technology, on a process, on a fiber that will save the world. This will never happen. What can save the world is a cultural shift, full stop. So we need absolutely a different perspective, not a physical process, a physical technology, a physical fiber that can really override all our problem. Another issue, but I have really few times in explaining you, is that we still, and we always fall into this kind of cognitive bias. So the idea is that we know the world we want. We have maybe a clear vision of what we want, but somehow we cannot act accordingly. And this is something that we have to face and really to study on a neuroscience perspective for me. And so the idea of saying, you know, that in the Kahneman explanation, you have a fast thinking system and a slow thinking system. This system goes in crash every day. It's an evolutive, let's say, outcome. And ecology, environment is always the toughest problem to think. So you don't go to sleep every night thinking about the microplastic accumulation in your brain or in the ocean or whatever, because it's impossible. It's really very distant and far away from our evolution. But we need to take into account that the complexities and multiscalarity and divisibility of environmental issues need to be, let's say, applied in our everyday life. Again, don't fall in the frustration idea saying politicians or public institution will solve the problem for me. We need a legislation or whatever. Okay, this is fine, but you can do an incredible amount of things today or tomorrow if you believe in it. And so my let's say our slow fiber let's say wish is that all of us can really try to act according to the vision, to the world we want. And of course, for example, as consumers now, and it's sad to say it, but it's true, we have probably more power than citizens, no? Somehow, because everything seems run by the economic system rather than the political system. And so we need to face this aspect and to find a solution and to be less dissonant as possible. Another, okay, I will skip this. I already told you that. I will skip also this one. You can read it, or maybe we can come in another way. But the idea here is, let's stay on the first paragraph only. We need to pursue three things at the same time: efficiency. And again, we dubbed that the efficiency is only the economic efficiency, because nature has a completely different efficiency that is balanced, that is steadiness, and it's not growth at any cost, or is a different growth measured in a different way. But besides efficiency, we need to be fair, so to reduce inequality, and we need to be effective, because time is running, and is running much faster than the epoch when slow food was created. So we have less time, but we need to be effective. So to act later maybe is useless, can become useless, because you already pass tipping points in any aspect, not only environmentally speaking, but even socially speaking. So efficiency, but a different efficiency. Fair and effective are the three main, let's say, guidelines for our transition, our clean transition. The last two, healthy is everything that deals with chemicals, and here I can skip. I told you that we don't need to get rid of a specific fiber or to rely on one fiber that will save us, because everything has its pros and cons. We need to do things in a right way. So the use of chemicals must be less than possible. We need to reduce all the hazardous chemicals or the chemicals that in the definition of EU law raise concerns. So because the problem here is that sometimes you discover that a particular chemical substance is harmful after years and years of use. And now we have no time, probably, again, to be effective. We need to prevent this rather than intervene afterwards. And be careful, because your skin is the first barrier against the external world. So is the organ, the biggest organ we have, and need to be taken into account. There are really few studies, also few awareness, generally speaking, about the relationship between health and textiles. We need to raise this. So beside the social, environmental problem, we need to consider also the healthy problem. Under a very simple approach, that is the One Health approach. So health means healthy for the consumer that use the garment, but also the workers that are involved in the production chain. I will skip this one because we will go too far away, but again, here you have a clear idea of how the growth of fiber use goes together with the growth of chemical substances. So there is really a connection between the two. And let's go to the, here you have an idea of the fiber consumption, where polyester is the huge majority, not only for characteristics, but because of costs. So the idea is let's use any fiber, because every fiber has its own characteristic and use and function, but don't use it only for profit purpose, so to cut costs and to have, or to avoid the washing or the ironing of a garment, because we have different solutions to do it. So again, maybe our comfort is not the only point of view we can apply in using the fiber. I will skip this one because it will take too much. Let's take a look to the fair, that is the labor for us. Sorry. Here, it means many things. First of all, we need decent work. We need meaningful job, and be careful about this aspect, because we one of our most urgent concern is to offer to the new generation meaningful job, whereby you can realize your own personality, your own, let's say, dreams or whatever. Now, again, modernity sometimes in the economic system offer you very poor job, or what Graeber called the bullshit job. Sorry for this. We need to completely make a U-turn on this point. Let's cut the jobs that are meaningless and are just for a few person profit sake, and let's reconsider jobs and work as a way of living, if you want. So not just an escape among entertainment and let's say free time, but as a way of expressing your own personality. I can make here very quickly, but I don't want to explain you this, but it's incredible that we are still here. Here is the, not everybody knows that the first factory was a cotton factory. So humankind started to stop working in the countryside because of cotton, so because of textile. with all the possible distortion in one model. So in the colonies where the cotton was grown, you have the double problem of slavery, reintroduced after the French Revolution and the American Revolution. And secondly, you have the the use of only one cultivation that makes a huge damage to the food sovereignty of many countries. In the center, so in Liverpool and Manchester, where you have all the mechanization of the process of ginning, spinning, and weaving and knitting, you have another problem. So the proletarization of peasants, that was really strong because the age of entry into the industry was 8-9 years. And be careful, the average lifespan expectancy was 17 years and was 2 centuries ago. So yesterday, okay? This, that seems for us another planet, is what we simply moved from Liverpool and Manchester to somewhere else. And because we don't see it under our eyes, we think it doesn't exist. But be careful because the problems are still the same. And so here, very quickly, the problem of transparency, of subcontracting, of labor exploitation, of social dumping, also the disappearance of textile supply chains. Here I put just the UK and US data, but you can do it everywhere. And the idea is, again, to bring slow fiber everywhere in the world. So we want a boost of local production everywhere. I skip also this one that you know very well, but we will have the slide, I think, at the end of the day. We are still in the middle of an unequal ecological exchange like a few centuries ago. The last but not the least values for us is the durability. So the idea of, and here you have the most difficult aspect to measure, to assess, because obviously we don't want to compare fibers that have nothing to do. So it's stupid to say polyester is more durable than wool because the mechanical friction will destroy the wool and will keep the polyester alive. We need in each kind of product and fiber and whatever specialty you want to consider, we need to do the best product as possible. So what is really too closed down is the sociological obsolescence, the planned obsolescence, and the idea of having products that are used few times and then go to waste disposal. And here, every solution is fine. So again, we don't want to be extreme, but we want to be comprehensive. So vintage, second-hand market, rental, whatever is fine. And I'm saying this from the producer point of view, okay? Because we know that we don't need, again, to gain that market shares, but we need to slow down both the production, the consumption, and the waste production. I think I can stop here because, and I open to the questions.
Thank you so much. 2 comments. You just keep saying you know everything. No, we don't know everything. And I think we learned a lot. And I should have added that you're not only the founder of Slow Fiber and an entrepreneur, you're also a professor. And today was very clear from the depth of your presentation. Thank you so much. I had some questions to start with, but there are questions in the chat. So I'll start, to be fair, with those that are online. And we have several interesting questions. First of all, to reassure everybody, we will make this presentation available online, so you will have it. The first question is from Zoe. And she's saying, super interesting conversation. Question for the panel, that is you. What role do you think psychology, and you touched upon this, and building psychological literacy plays in the ethical side of fashion and sustainability? Is there a need to understand human behavior's motivations? You start from that, and then, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is a very good point, and it's fun because I was telling to Paola just before the starting that some of my students in Rome that are from Asia, so Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, are doing dissertation thesis about the way we can, let's say, strengthen the emotional link between person and object. That seems crazy, but is one of the way to reduce waste. No, so many sociologists say explained us that the less you buy, the less you care. Okay, so one of the problems we are facing is that we don't care about what we buy because we pay it too little money, and so the idea to define any, let's say, solution to let people and push people in caring about is fundamental. And this is one aspect. The other aspect, as you said in the question, is to, again, put the ecological aspect into our life without, let's say, falling into the eco-anxiety, all the problems that we can have. I'm studying it for now several years. I never fall into an eco-anxiety, so I think it can be possible. That psychology is fundamental, and the idea is that we won't find a solution if we keep each, let's say, scope of knowledge in a closed room. So we need a total, how can I say, interdisciplinary approach. So psychology, sociology, neuroscience, and ecology must work together. So I totally agree with the question and the idea of having psychology at the center of the problem.
Next one is slow food is a global movement. Does slow fiber operates mainly in Italy or also globally?
Another very good question. Slow fiber was born in Italy for a simple reason. So we need to define, to test, and to fine-tune our KPI system. Once you know a system, even from a legal point of view, it's easier to define all the constraint and the aspect of our 5 key values. But our willingness is to open slow fiber everywhere in the world, and we cannot wait to do it. So we want to open a slow fiber in the global south, in any country that is still a supply chain that shares these values and wants to protect this vision, the industrial vision, from the mainstream distortion, you can say.
Thank you. Lots of interesting questions. So I'm going to the next one. How does this movement affect high fashion companies and the policies of countries like China, India, and others that produce clothing on a large scale? And what are the recommendations for a circular economy? I mean, you can talk for the next 2 days. Maybe short.
High fashion, I think you think luxury fashion or something like this. Obviously, a luxury product normally is healthy, good, clean, fair, and long-lasting.
And expensive.
But brava Paola. So the point is, we need, it's like slow food is only star Michelin restaurants. No, we need both levels. So we need a clean, fair, long-lasting, and good and healthy product to be affordable for everybody, in the sense that everybody has his own buying power. So we cannot make a revolution for everybody, but we need, and that's why we want to be locally present everywhere in the world. We need to offer, like it is in food, a good, safe food and a good, safe products everywhere at every level. Now, obviously, to respect this principle means to give a totally different price and value into the product. So we cannot keep on thinking that for us a textile product is disposable. So we can wear it a few times and then we get rid of it, maybe using Vinted or other platform to resell it again. So we need to slow down in any case. But we want to, let's say, to be also a possible model or example for the fast fashion. As for circularity is fundamental, is interesting. As circularity, if we keep the system as it is, has many problems because volume and quantity, even in other sectors like plastic, are growing so fast that even the recycling innovation methods and widespreading is not enough. So if you take a look to the rate of for example, recycling of plastic every year is decreasing because we produce too many. So the idea is, again, circularity is fundamental, but we need a cultural shift, first of all. Secondly, we need safety product to be reused, because if we don't have a chemical, let's say, safety or an attention to the production level, we are, let's say, we are compelled to deal with dangerous material to be, let's say, introduced in another maybe industry or in the same industry like textile. So circularity is fundamental, but cannot be, again, alone the only solution. We need a comprehensive vision. So whatever we said plus circularity is clear.
Very good, thank you. So there are a lot of thank you coming from the which we take to the UN and to you. So we're pleased with that. Now I have a question for Guillermo that we know is actually a colleague, and I know why he's asking this question, but it's very interesting also because it is a sector that is particularly interesting. Is there already a consumer community ready for slow fiber? And can trends like running and wellness help grow? And I'm telling you why we are discussing this, because I was working with Guillermo on an event in Milan, which was about sustainability and Xenia was there with me as well, in the sports wear. And that's a big one, which is highly unsustainable. So very good question. Then it's providing some examples, but I'll let you answer this. We have more coming also.
Yeah, so our idea is very simple again. There is a consumer community because, by the way, all the companies that join Slow Fiber are now incredibly well doing in an emergency situation like it is now. 5 years, no? We have a COVID pandemic, we had some wars, we had speculation on financial speculation on raw materials, transport, energy, whatever. So everybody is going in the wrong direction, but there is still, and we face it every day, a consumer community that is open to buy less and better. For me, this is clear, and we experience it every day. About wellness and well-being, again, for me, sportswear is a mystery, to be clear, because it's very strange that people that like sports or that like nature then make a totally dissonant choice in consumption, and they use basically only synthetic garments. That for some, again, use is fine. For others, is for sure too much or extreme, or basically grounded on a cost motivation. So it's not the performance, but it's so the idea is, let's link well-being and wellness both to human consumer health and nature, because again, the One Health approach. So if I'm well-being, no, I feel well only if the nature, the environment around me is healthy as well, is the only key to understand the problem. Because once you don't have, no, what we quoted before, so the ecosystem service is granted for free by nature, we cannot be well. So the idea is we have to communicate. My feeling is, whenever an auditor, no, or a target take the time to listen to you, maybe not for 20 minutes, but for a couple of hours, it's very difficult to come back to your previous habit. So I met in these 5 years, between 2021, when my book was published, up to now, probably 6,000 between students and people. Half of them, after the presentation, change totally their own consuming habit.
Thank you.
You need to embrace complexity. It's not easy.
I have to say that, and not that I want to make publicity, there's only in French and Italian for now, but this book is quite life-changing. I have to say that I suggest you read, because it's this presentation in much more depth. So I agree with you that there is a point when the understanding is so deep that you can only change, because otherwise you're not true to yourself. And we try to be true to ourselves. Quickly, with last question. First of all, Himalayan Wild Fibers would like to contact you and see what you do. So contact him directly. We'll not discuss this here. But they would like to engage.
Yeah, so perfect. We cannot wait to the fiber producer. The first step.
Then there are a couple of questions that could have been asked by me, but actually are coming from the. So Michael Stanley Jones, hello, is online, and we know him very well. Has low fiber philosophy reached the aquaculture fiber sector? Kelp, algae-based fibers production.
We know that it exists, but we don't have contact so far. So if you can, it will be fine, because again, we embrace every solution. We are talking now with the IM Silk, that is the silk made from a spider net, but it's just starting. So we are open to every process that respects this value. So fantastic.
This is very interesting. This is a question that I might have asked. You talked about the fact that we don't want to exclude any type of fiber, but if the main importation 80% petrol-based and cotton in Europe are also the fiber that have the worst environmental and social impact. I think it's referring to petrol-based, 80%, 70%. Okay. In any case, how can we make a cultural shift if the main fibers used are the ones that are environmentally and socially destructive? This is what we were discussing over lunch. So that's a very good question. Thank you for.
So let's make the example of cotton, very simply, and then we go to the synthetic. Cotton sometimes is considered the worst fiber ever because it consumes water, pesticide, fertilizer, and the like. But it's not cotton itself, it's the way we want to grow it. So the quantity and the profit that is behind. Slow food for us is really a guideline, because slow food has never been vegan or vegetarian. You can be, obviously, it's fine, it's your choice, nothing to say. But the idea is you can do everything in a good way. So you don't need to get rid of everything totally. Also because there is a matter of biodiversity, by the way. So the idea of using even an efficient fiber in the sense of economic inefficiency, so that grow slowly, that are not that, let's say, productive and the like, sometimes can be a solution for a problem that is still to come. So the idea for me is not, the problem is not cotton, is the way we grow cotton. Let's see, Aral Lake, what happens everywhere. If we switch to the synthetic, so if you need to make a chair of an airplane, of a train, or the chair we are sitting in, obviously you need to use synthetic. The problem is that synthetic, I agree with you, now is too much, because we use it for everything, because the price is very low. They get out of the washing machine dry and already ironed. But this is again a comfort that goes together with your cognitive dissonance. We're talking together. So if I have a vision of the world, I cannot act against my vision, but I need to know. So once I know it, probably I try to align my vision with my consumption habit. And so, for example, I don't, I can say that, I don't have a single synthetic garment in my house. It's crazy. Only my kids, because they play tennis and they want sometimes the T-shirt of the champions or whatever. But you can have, but again, for the right use, in the right volume, in the right quantity, and never waste. If you don't waste, there's no problem. The problem is waste. What you waste in production, what you waste at the end of the use, because the use is too short.
Thank you. Now, Alexander, our colleague, with a very interesting question, finds the presentation interesting. And it's amazing how little natural materials like wool are used. And I think this is shocking for everybody when we realize that wool is even less than 1%. So this is already a aha moment. Are there plans to promote the use of wool and other animal fibers?
We don't have now so far. We mainly, the large majority of our group is focused on natural fiber. So we have a few synthetic fiber players, but so far we are a little bit unbalanced towards natural. We believe in natural. We don't believe in the classical argument again saying if everybody use wool or silk, there will not be enough raw material for everybody. At this volume and quantity, at this overconsumption, overproduction model. But if we change this and we buy less and better, there's room for everything, I think. So our idea is, again, let's consider really what we need. Let's focus on the best characteristic of the fiber according to the use we want, because the performance and the design is one side of the coin, but the other side is how I produce it, how I transform the fiber into the final products. And this aspect needs to be, for us, clean, fair, long-lasting, and healthy, and so on.
Dario, we have many requests to get in touch with you, so just get in touch with him. I will not exactly
start a serious webinar.
And just contact him. Go to the web slow.
There is, I think, my mail address at the end of the presentation, so you will receive it maybe.
There are also questions about what you said. Fair. I will not read this question. Is about the ethical sides and social issues. I think you covered it enough. That's a very interesting question. I think you have an answer. Is what efforts are currently being made to engage and encourage youth participation in the slow fiber movement? So
very good. We have a couple, maybe 3 big projects that we like. So maybe they're not big, but we like it, so we think they are big. One is we are doing a graphic novel based on a sociological research on the Z generation. So from we listen to young person between 15 and 29 years old. We receive some indication about the relationship between health, sustainability, and textile, and we are designing a graphic novel to express what they think. Is a listening, and then mixing the listening with our values, and this will come at the end of this year. We do every year a convention, a slow fiber convention in Turin, and we involve all the students from the university and the like. We are teaching almost everywhere, so in Rome, in many universities, in the Institute of Design, and so we have many concepts with the AF. And the final things probably is that maybe we will have my book in a kids version before the end of the year. So this will be another little effort to talk with the youngest. But we go in high schools and primary schools every week, because we work. We are 50. We split the territory, the Italian territory, and so we do little things globally from a global perspective, but from our perspective, we are involved in education really strongly, and we know that we need this. The only weaknesses we have for sure probably is our social media channels that are designed so far for the B2B aspects, and not that much for the B2C, and mainly for the youngest generation. But we are trying to facing it.
Last question. Looks like an interview here. It's like, we'll see whether you're hired at the end or not. And there are many comments, people getting in touch with you suggest that then you go straight to him. But this question has 6 hearts, and because it's actually a very last question, we close with that. How can indigenous textile traditions, and that's very important aspect for the UN as well, so indigenous textile traditions and cultural heritage systems be better integrated into the global slow fashion conversation without losing their authenticity or becoming commercially exploited? Thank you for this.
Yeah. And this is, be careful, a specific problem of textile, because if I tell you, all of you, which is the typical food of your village, city, or you can ask me. And even if you have 2 little villages really close one to each other, there are slightly differences in food. When you go to textile has been globalized, as you see, in the 18th century. And so the problem is that the culture, the link between culture, territory, and textile is much weaker than in food. But we know, and we are together with Slow Food for this aim, we need to recover it. So the idea is, let's make exactly what did Slow Food for the Presidium. So Slow Food, wherever we found, Slow Food International, so Slow Food in every country, when we found a particular production, a product, so can be a plant, can be a vegetable, can be an animal, that is running the risk of disappearing because it's not productive, it's not efficient from a pure economic perspective, you create a presidium and try to protect it and to promote it. We have to do the same things. So my wish after this webinar is to start local slow fiber everywhere, and so to put these indigenous fundamental capacity and skills that otherwise will get lost into Presidium, and then to create this global movement. So we need, by the way, to play a local, let's say, model. So we need the local, the heritage, the territory, and then, as far as we can, to promote it at a global level. But the link with the territory for us is fundamental, because it means production, it means local skills that you cannot find everywhere, and you cannot sometimes repeat standardized scale. But these words we don't like. So repetition, standardization, volume, quantity is exactly the opposite we want to be.
Well, thank you so much, Dario. I think we nailed it today by the amount of questions we are receiving and messages of support. I stop it here. I see there's still one more question, the EU, but we will have other presentations. This question can be asked. Maybe virtually you can clap your hands, but in this to do it. It was really, really enlightening. It's really wonderful to have you here. And I think this is just the first of many events that we are looking forward to organizing with you in the future, because this is a really important concept that I really think that could make a difference. I'm going to give it now to give the floor to Sarah, who is gonna take us through the second part of the event, which is really for the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion and their presentation. I think also for you, Dario and Marco, is going to be interesting to see the other side of the coin, right? What the UN and how the UN is trying to address these issues. And the first speaker is next to you, and I leave it to Sarah in any case to introduce.
Thank you so much, Paola. Thank you so much, Dario, and thanks everybody online and here in person for the questions and reflections. I would like now to move on the second part of today's event on the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion. Through its work, the Alliance will show us how a single garment can connect issues as diverse as land restoration, forest management, chemical waste, gender equality, innovation, transparency, and so much more. And I would like to start with our first speaker, Xenia Scanlon. She is the Chief of Unit, Communication, External Relations and Partnerships of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. And it's great to start where every fiber story starts, which is the land. So I give you the floor to you, the clicker to you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you very much, Paola and Dario. Dario, you're a very hard act to follow, because a lot of what you said really resonates deeply. Let me just say that I absolutely want to join your tribute to Carlo Petrini and the slow food movement, because it was really a deep personal inspiration, and indeed a lot of what I have seen and worked on over the past years in the sustainable fashion space was indeed that very strong sense of inspiration. So first of all, I would like to talk a little bit about the work that we do at the United Nations Convention to combat desertification under the initiative called Fashion for Land. And if you haven't heard about UNCCD before, we're one of the 3 UN conventions known as the Rio Conventions that deal respectively with climate. You've heard about the climate COPs, for instance. The other 2 deal with biodiversity, and in our case, indeed, all things to do with land and drought. So in some ways, we also see our role as contributing to that overall discussion on how do we relate to the fashion industry in recognition of the importance of this industry, both in terms of its environmental, social, economic impacts, but also the influence that it carries in terms of, again, you know, behavior and just the overall approach to our relationship with the planet. So we do look at the Fashion for Land as a part of our overall engagement with the private sector under the Business for Land platform. And we really wish to connect fashion and the value chains to the broader food, feed, fiber agenda so that we can align with the land stewardship goals. So what we try to do is, again, you know, take the lens of this discussion to the land sector, because while the climate impacts generally have been very well researched and known, we found out that in the land space, indeed, we didn't really know much about the impacts. And I think you've covered that, you know, sort of transition. Obviously, we hope that at some point it will become more circular, but at this stage, you know, we looked at the role of various fibers and their impacts. Like you, we're not advocating for a particular fiber over another. We are really looking at what is that cumulative impact on land and what is and where it occurs. And for instance, in the case of the natural fibers, of course, it's more associated with the production stage, whereas for the synthetic fibers, we are seeing, of course, at the end of life, this is where the problems start to emerge to their fullest. And what we've learned, we've started to share, and we put out there as a publication that is both a physical publication, but also a scroll. So you can also find it on the Fashion for Land website. So it really explores that red thread as we see it. Since we started with the Fashion for Land, we also have been proudly collaborating with the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion. I would like to really commend the Alliance for generating some of these important conversations, but also hopefully a more consistent and coherent way in which the United Nations system does address the fashion industry as a whole. And at our last conference of the parties in Riyadh at COP16, for the first time, we held an event that really brought together some of the leaders from the fashion industry, from the international space, and also fashion producers. For instance, we're working very closely, and it was mentioned a few times already, with the Sustainable Fiber Alliance. And this is exactly the alliance that really looks at that specific engagement primarily with the wool producers. And I'm really happy that today we did talk about it, and you had that very shocking 1% in your presentation, because this is actually something that we look forward to working on very closely in the lead up to our next conference of the parties in Mongolia. This time it's going to be in August of this year, and we're raising the bar very much higher. Why? Because we also want to not just have one event, one convening on sustainable fashion, but we're actually going to have a half-day Fashion for Land forum. So everybody is very warmly invited to participate, and we're working as I mentioned before, also under the umbrella of the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion, to first of all talk about how we connect the young entrepreneurs with the established fashion industry players. So give space for innovation, which I think is much needed, in whether it or not it's going to solve all of our issues, but we do see that, for instance, whether it's spider silk, whether it's orange peels turned into silk-like fabrics, you know, this is the exciting frontier. We also look at a lot of those innovations that blend the health aspects and the performance aspects as well. So that's just one example. Address waste issues, promote circularity. The second discussion will be dedicated indeed to wool and natural fibers. And here again, I very much agree with what you mentioned in terms of, you know, sort of all the approach of all things in moderation, looking at the varied impacts and varied meanings of some of the products that we use. For instance, in the case of wool, it's not just the production, right? It's also the cultural traditions that go with it. It's also the way in which, you know, we associate even some certain names or areas with particular fibers. And if we don't produce them anymore, it is going to be a loss of our cultural heritage and identity in some cases. I just recently, 2 weeks ago, was in the middle of nowhere talking with pastoralists who just said sheep growers. And they said, for us, there is no way just through wool we can make ends meet. Producing today wool is not economically sustainable. They rely on both wool and meat production to survive. And I'm sure this is not just an isolated case. It is something that we're seeing the world over. And again, this might come across as a sort of, as a bit of a complex message to unpack, but we do need to look at various fibers. And again, you know, you've talked about it, how cotton has been maybe in some ways vilified, but on the other hand, again, having been to the Aral Sea and having seen the impact of kilometers and kilometers of just, you know, dried up seabed, that is now a source of major pollution and has brought just devastation to millions of people in this area. We also need to take into account that, you know, whatever we do does need to fit into that wider, you know, sort of holistic view. So what we would hope to do through our engagement is to deepen collaboration with key partners and shape policy and industry uptake of more sustainable ways of going about fashion. And here, let me sort of finish by saying that we're today marking World Environment Day. We know that we have a lot of things that we still need to do, but I would like to say the 3 things that do give me hope. One thing, I do believe that consumers are changing, and they are changing in a more positive way. I'm a mother of 2 teenagers. I've seen how my children relate to the fashion industry, how thrifting has suddenly become a thing on social media, that there is a lot more recognition that we need to move away from that, you know, consume. I think we're past that peak consumerism phase, and I truly hope that in the fashion space it's going to be, you know, slower and better, and we can always trust on Italians to take things slowly and to make things beautiful, right? And the second thing that gives me hope is that actually within the industry, I see also important shifts and important movements. Earlier this week, I was attending an event called the World Living Soils Forum, taking place in Arles, in France, and to see some of the signs of the luxury industry talk about the importance of healthy soil for the fashion sector, for the you know, food or luxury, even goods sector. It is a new recognition, and I hope that this leadership indeed will continue to grow, and that your slow fiber movement grows and other, you know, like-minded initiatives really do grow. Third thing, I do think that governments are taking the fashion sector more seriously overall. However, here what I would like to mention is that I still believe that a lot more regulation is needed. And this to me is a big difference between the food sector and the fashion sector. The food sector is highly regulated. If you're not complying with hygiene standards, you cannot run in a restaurant, right? If your product is toxic, it's not going to be approved for human consumption. In the fashion industry, we're still lacking a lot of that basic regulation at the national and the international level. So I do feel, and that's why at the forthcoming COP17 in Mongolia, we will have a roundtable specifically talking about the policy instruments and the incentives that we need to put into place to make sure that the industry is actually supported when it's trying to do the right things. And with that, thank you again for the opportunity to intervene, and wonderful to hear from all of you and those online. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kenya, for reminding us that healthy land is crucial for fibers and so many other ecosystem services and products. And thank you also for the invitation to the Fashion for Land Forum, and also for bringing some hope to the room. From the land beneath our feet, I would like to now turn on to another critical natural resource and climate ally, which are the forests. And it is my pleasure to introduce Liliana Annovati-Jakab, the Chief of the Forest Energy Section at UNECE.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have my, I can take care of that. Thank you very much. Let me come back to the shift. Actually, I had chosen this as my title, The Shift. Here it's a bit different what you can see, but let me also clarify that when we talk about slow fibers, here this is not about the movement per se, but it's actually about fibers that grow slowly. And that again is an incredible link also to what Xenia just said, because growing slowly has advantages for the soil, for land. So let me start with that shift, and with another buzzword that you said, and that's extraction, because trees are everything but extractive, and they're actually growing, and that leads us to regeneration, as you mentioned before. So I'm very happy that I was on the right line of thought, right mindset when I developed this. But I think it is very important that before we go into the whole discussion, we actually understand. And Xenia already showed you where all these fibers come from. And we still see that this hard truth is that 60% is oil-based. It's petrochemical, complex-based, what we have here, and only 40% are other fibers. And out of the 40%, Xenia had a way better illustration. There's very few actually regenerative fibers. Another important thing that you mentioned before, I loved this Manchester in India, Manchester in Bangladesh comparison. In addition to that, we have massive transport emissions. In addition to that, the climate angle is way more complex than, you know, just having one factory. It's actually one supply chain can have all of this here, 1,400 factories, 41 countries, 750 suppliers. How are you controlling this? How are you checking on this? You can neither do it fast nor slow. It's basically impossible. And what the slow movement brings is also proximity. And again, coming back to what Xenia said before, the food. Slow food means proximity, means production where you are and not necessarily out there somewhere where we cannot control it. Another story that I also found very interesting is actually this myth about recycling. And you mentioned it before, not everything can be recycled. It's actually super hard to recycle things. That net zero myth is a myth. We are masquerading something that we cannot master. And all this has a biological cost. So if we buy recycled polyester, it is still polyester. We are still shedding micro plastics and actually into our human food chain. Now, how do we get regenerative in all this? As you said, Sarah, there are the forests. There's one fiber that is a new benchmark. There are others. Let me stress this. There's a lot of innovation going on. I'm focusing on that one new benchmark, which you see in this fiber showdown in that table. Where it does have advantages is literally the feedstock, which is wood, the water usage, which by the way was also the feedstock of before of viscose. But viscose does not have the same level of toxicity, which here is basically zero because it's a closed loop, which you see on your left. In viscose, it isn't. In viscose, you have way more toxic agents coming into play, also uses way more water. But here, if we just focus on polyester, conventional, which dominates still the market, there is obviously organic cotton that uses less water, but water is a big issue for the cotton production and remains a big issue for the cotton production. In terms of land use, again, as you said before, Xenia, cotton is a big competitor with the food production. It's a big land user, and it's a destroyer of land in addition. You need fertilizers, you use pesticides, and that impacts the land. And exactly what we see today in the Aral Sea region is what it can end up being if not controlled. So the anatomy of a closed loop ecosystem is there. You see the various inputs, the various outputs. And let's just remember that really, if we say we recycle polyester, polyester does not get more sustainable when it's recycled. Full stop. It is what it is. We cannot make it more sustainable. We can recycle it, but it is there. It is exactly the same storyline. And you know, what is now happening is that we are actually in this linear trap where we just take, we make, we pollute, but we have to get out of it. This is one possibility of getting out of it. I'm stressing one possibility. And this is in addition to what Dario said before. If mindsets are not shifted, mind you, the shift, we are not going to get there. This is one option that gives concrete and good results. So it is one of the shifts necessary, but not the only one. It requires way more. Let me go to the next slide, and which for me is already the last one. So we are looking actually at something, and I'm very happy for your graphic on the forest, because my thought was very similar. We are looking at something that mimics nature, that mimics this ecosystem that we see in nature. In addition to over-consuming, now, where are all these resources? And this is something when I go to events and talk about forest-based fibers, oh my God, you're killing all the forests. Oh my God. I think overconsumption is definitely something we need to tackle first, definitely. However, good thing with this lyocell story is that we're actually not using prime timber. We're using actually low quality wood and the co-products, the leftovers, right? So that's a very, very good message here. In the region that UNECE covers, which is the Northern Hemisphere, and that holds 40% of all forests worldwide, we are obviously one of the logical leaders of this transition. And I'm very proud to say that. And we have a lot of companies in our regions that lead this kind of transition. However, there is wood around, a lot of wood around also, and trees around, and will be, as you can see here, way into 2040. The important thing for me, and coming back to the land issue, is definitely that forests don't require irrigations. Forests don't compete with food productions. Their low growth cycle is actually very good for the regeneration of the soil, and the synthetic fertilizers and pesticides are not used. This again is also good for biodiversity, where in fact in these plantations, they're not plantations, they're mixed species forests. Now, what is our message at the end? I'm very happy about what Xenia said about the food standards. Again, coming from the food industry, I totally underwrite that. For me, in this sector here, in this fashion sector, all these voluntary measures have definitely kickstarted something. Well done, guys. You kickstarted something, but it is apparently not enough. It is apparently not enough. Apparently, it does need way more mandatory supervision standards by regulators, by governments, by countries, by even by industry. They can be self-imposed, but there needs to be a much stricter regimen that is currently there. The transparency of the value chain is something we will hear about later on, but it's something that really needs to improve. These are complex chains, complex issues, and transparency is definitely something we need to look into. The recycling infrastructures, again, let's not fall into the myth of being able to recycle everything. There are certain things that can be recycled. Let's go for them. Let's improve that, but let's not go with the myth of everything is recyclable. For me, the future of fashion is really about where it comes from and actually what we leave behind. As you said, waste. Should we leave waste, or should we leave something that actually is not extracted and can blend back into the system, which is something these man-made cellulosic fibers can do. So my message is better choose something that grows than something that is being extracted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liliana. Thank you for highlighting that man-made cellulosic fibers can contribute to climate action, but also thank you for ending with the keyword of waste, because you make my job as moderator much easier. As our next speaker, Ms. Carla Val, who is joining us remotely, she will present the role of the chemicals and waste conventions and the slow fiber transition. She is the program management officer in the science and technical assistance branch of the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention of UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. Carla, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I would like to also thank, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to thank Paola first for organizing another very, very inspiring event, and all the speakers. It's very nice to see all of you, hear all of you, so many nice contributions. Congratulations for each of you. I will try to bring here the perspective that Sarah just mentioned, which is this perspective from the waste and chemicals conventions. Please confirm to me whether you can see my presentation. Can you see?
Yes, all good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, so listening to all of you, I was thinking of another terminology. We love terminology, no? It seems that we are dealing with another yet weak problem that shouldn't take, in my opinion, all our hopes, but definitely we are dealing with complex problems here. And Dario made a lot of references in his presentation to that. So my presentation is about the contribution, a small contribution perhaps, on this big complex scenario that we're dealing with, but it's still a relevant one. So I work for these three conventions, the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions, which are examples of waste management, the Basel Convention, trade as well, Rotterdam, safe trades of chemicals, and the Stockholm Convention, which covers one group of chemicals called persistent organic pollutants, and the three of them aim at improving the way we deal with chemicals and waste in the environment, and trying to protect the environment and also our health from the adverse effects of these hazardous chemicals and wastes. So they totally are aligned with what we've been discussing here today. And in that sense, I think the conventions can really not only be there as treaties and other treaties, like also Stenia also talked about another one, and there are many out there. Each of us is trying to contribute from a different perspective. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't. Specifically on these ones, I think they have an important governance framework possibility to help in relation to the slow fiber movement and textile in general, in relation to textile circularity, also in terms of the import, export, and transits of used textile and textile waste. So specifically on the Basel Convention, in about 3 weeks, we are going to have a meeting here in Geneva with all the parties to this convention, where we will discuss whether that convention will start more refined work in this field. And we got a lot of comments from different parties, so countries and stakeholders saying that they have a lot of appetite to improve the situation. We also can think of the conventions as a means to improve the safe trade and management of chemicals used in the textile production. We would like to also highlight the impact on the reduction that these conventions have on harmful chemicals in products and articles, and also to improve the accountability across the global value chains in the full life cycle approach. And I would like to positively think that these conventions can also help us move towards the transition between the fast fashion industry and waste systems and so on, towards a more sustainable and slower and ideally regenerative fiber economies. Here, I'm trying to highlight why the conventions on chemicals and waste really matter. And I think I mentioned some of them in the previous slide. But I think one of the discussions is the first bullet point that is happening now is how much of this circularity is really able to distinguish what is really circularity or it's a global displacement of textile waste. And I think if the Basel Convention really starts work in this field, the idea is to improve what's happening nowadays, what we are observing, the extrapolation of volumes of countries sending things from one side to another in the globe, and not necessarily with the label circularity, but not necessarily that's happening, and the limitations of recycling and things like that. So it totally aligns with the slow fiber approach that is trying to contribute to a more durable, traceable, and socially equitable reduction of waste generation at the source. These conventions also can be a means to connect policy with solutions, ideally. Paola was saying, we talk a lot about problems and high-level things, and Dario was trying to talk about solutions. And I think these conventions have elements which also can contribute as solutions and not just a high-level discussion at the political level. Here I try to put the conventions in comparison to contributions of this low fiber movement. And I see some of these elements. There are more, but I would like to highlight some of them here, and we have limited time. So one of them is really the avoidance of toxic chemicals, with the aim also to help in the waste prevention and make our fibers and our garments, etc., longer life cycle materials. They contribute to material health, to the traceability, to more durable aspects that we have in our societies that are lacking in our societies. The conventions also contribute to environmentally sound management of chemicals and of waste, and that again aligns with the idea of safer chemistries and more traceable inputs. The conventions also aim at reducing transboundary waste burdens, by reducing, meaning avoiding as much as possible. And I think if we would change the way we consume and the quantity and the type of products that we are using nowadays, that would more naturally happen. And nowadays, I think many countries are having difficulties in managing their own problems, and therefore also the idea of circular or expanding this outside of their own territory. It's very difficult to manage every hazardous things that we are generating on our own territories. And then accountability and transparency. I think this is still not exactly all obvious in these conventions, but there is a lot of work trying to improve that, either by the use of technology in terms of trade, by also more disclosure about what is composing a product and what's containing in a specific article, which is not necessarily nowadays the case. And as I think Darius was saying in the beginning, we buy clothes without knowing what is inside. And that same situation has happened with food, and we are seeing a shift on that. And mentioning that event we had in Milan, which was also very interesting, on sportswear, one of the sportsmen who was sitting in the podium came to talk to me after our talks, and he was sharing his views, saying that it lacks also, we also lack education. So athletes and all of us, in a sense, we also lack education. We are seeing more of this educative approach towards food, but we're still lacking in terms of garments and textiles. So we look at labels. We in this room or here in this event are educated people, but many people out there don't have even the means to understand what this chemistry is listed in some of the products are. So he was sharing with me that he had a strong allergy and he was a professional athlete. And even having that strong allergy towards his career, he didn't have an alternative, another type of garment to use in his practices. So we have a lot of space for improvement here. And finally, the issue of equity and justice that applies to the whole value chain, and of course, it applies also to the scope of these three conventions. So from the point of view of each of them, I tend to think that the Rotterdam Convention can really contribute more towards the beginning of the life cycle and what enters the system, while the Stockholm Convention is trying to eliminate what remains harmful in terms of chemicals in the system, and the Basel Convention contributes more towards the end, what's still living in the system. And this low fiber movement, as far as I can understand, really seeks to transform all of this. So I really think that the preventive approach and principles at the heart of these three conventions are in very strong alignment with this low fiber movement, and I think it's important for us to continue to contribute. So the only detail that I would like to share is that I think we still need diversity, Darius. This idea of spider net fiber is very beautiful, but I'm really afraid of spiders. So I'm just joking here. Of course, this is just a joke from a personal point of view, but definitely we need solutions that fulfill the different needs, that may need to use certain materials that we're still using, and therefore I go back to my definition of wicked problem. So we need multiple actions and points of view, and I think all of us here in this panel today are bringing that perspective. So thank you very much, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Carla. I'm also scared of spiders, but I'm interested in seeing where that development goes. Thank you as well for mentioning equity and gender equality, because we heard it a lot today. We consider the materials that go into fashion, but it's equally important to consider the substances that accompany them through the life cycle. And it's also important to understand that sustainability is not only about environmental outcomes, but also about people and livelihoods. And to explore this perspective, I would like to invite Ms. Tako Joy. She is the gender team leader of the Rural Transformation and Gender Equality Division of FAO, and she will present on the gender dimension of the ethical fiber value chain.
Thank you. So this year is a very particular year for us. It's the International Year of the Woman Farmer, and we know that women also play great roles in cotton. Okay. Women also dominate the fiber chain, but we also know that they capture almost none or a lot less of its value. We know, for instance, that usually when we talk about fashion, the conversation looks at the factory, but the presentation actually takes us back to the farm, from the farm to the factory to the closet, I would say. We know that women are the majority, not only on the production lines, but also in the fields, the pastures, and the looms. But they capture almost none of the value. If you look at the field level, we know that 46% of cotton farmers worldwide are women. We also know that in Peru, for instance, 60% of Peru's alpaca breeding labor force are women. When we look at the loom, in India's hand loom, the 70% of the workforce are women. And when we look at the factory dimension, 75% of the global garment workforce are women. What comes with that is that usually they are predominant in precarious working conditions, lower paid, labor intensive, more precarious contractual arrangements, and they paid less for their work of equal value as men. For when we look at agri-food systems, from FAO's report on the status of women in agri-food systems, we know that for each dollar that men earn, women earn 82 cents. We also know that typically women farm much smaller plots. However, even when you compare women and men working on the same plots, the gender gap in productivity in the land productivity is 24% because they have less access to mechanization, to inputs, and so on. So why 2026 matters, why this is such a great moment to have this conversation, to bring gender into the discussion on slow fibers. This year's World Environmental Day falls within the International Year of the Woman Farmer, an international year to recognize the amazing contributions that women farmers in their diversity. And when we talk about women farmers, we are looking into a very large definition of all women working in agri-food systems. So we would like to really recognize the contributions, document what work in bridging the gender gaps, but also see how best to influence the policies, the programs, and the investment plans in the agri-food sector. So this year not only is the International Year of the Woman Farmer, but it's also the International Year of Rangelands and pastoralists. And we talk about alpaca fiber and all that. It is also a very important year in that sense. So it really brings a very a great political opportunity to address climate and decent work and gender equality in the fiber value chain. So beyond cotton and wool, we know that the next frontier is really about alternative and regenerative fibers, not only in terms of the processing, but also all the natural dyeing, the different finishing practices that go with that. And what opportunity they bring in empowering women through innovation, through entrepreneurship, through market access, to break out of poverty and hunger when you talk about FAO's mandate. So the idea here is to see that it all starts with the design, the intentionality in the design of putting women center stage in the way that we design the interventions, the support is very important, whether we are looking into bamboo, coconut, banana, or other plant-based fibers. So the inclusion, designing with intentionality, putting women center stage requires to look at different aspects, including the land rights, the financial inclusion, the traceability, and the contractual arrangements. So there are many areas where the dividends are well documented. If you look at, for instance, this case of Kerala in India, where rural women are trained in jackfruit tree natural dyeing, and that they were able to raise their incomes through different livelihood programs. We also have many examples from Maasai women in Kenya with the ITC Ethical Fashion Africa Initiative, where we see the contributions in terms of greater income, health, but also market access. And we also have another example from the Himalayas, where women led collective in applique, patchwork, and hand embroidery is a viable enterprise employing rural women at community level. So the idea here is to really emphasize that the alternative fibers are not automatically inclusive. They really require these inclusive models, inclusive value chains, design with intentionality, putting women at the center of it and addressing different issues around land rights, finance, traceability, and contracts. So what are the 3 priorities for UNECE and the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion? Data is very important, gender disaggregated data. where possible, also gender and age and other socioeconomic characteristics. In terms of informing the policies that we know not only where the fiber comes from, but also from whom, who does the work, who benefits from what, who is challenged. So the traceability must really extend beyond the geography to identify who are the people, the women, the young people, young women and young men whose labor really underpins the chain. How do we bring gender disaggregated data into the reporting frameworks, the certification schemes, the procurement systems, so that we can inform the policies and programs and interventions. The other one is about finance that really reaches female-headed households. We know that, it's well documented within FAO that the intention in general is explicit. When we look at the policy documents, we see that most of them have gender, well referenced, articulated. However, only 6% treat gender as fundamental in project design. So the branch should really co-finance the adaptations in producing communities, not just extract, but leave value. The third dimension where we would like to highlight the priority is the long-term contracts with women-led cooperatives. The cooperatives, the producer unions, the different types of producer organizations, through long-term commercial relationships with women-led producer cooperatives. And usually when you talk about women in the workplace, you also have a number of ILO conventions of non-discrimination in the workplace, equal pay for equal work, maternity protection in the workplace. I mean, how do we address all those very key issues? So there are different, different groups that can be given as examples: the Alpaca Breeders Association in the Andes, the weaver cooperatives in South Asia, the artisans collectives across Saharan Africa. So they do not need just another pilot project. They really need contracts. They need to change the systems, the structures, to ensure that women are well positioned, that they contribute equally, benefit equally from the sector. So in conclusion, I would say that to make this International Year of the Woman Farmer count, it really must lead to structural change. It's very good to raise awareness, but it should really give very concrete transformation to women on the ground, the woman in the field, the pasture, and the home workshop. So that's really where the definition of ethical fashion should begin. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Taco. I think it's a little bit sad that it doesn't come as a surprise that women dominate the fiber value chain, but they don't capture pretty much any of its value. But it's also inspiring to see your work and the projects that you have to empower women and hopefully close this gap. For the sake of time, I will move to our penultimate speaker, because creating a more sustainable fashion sector does all require new ideas, new technologies, new forms of innovation. And with this, it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Anja van der Rapp. She is the Senior Program Coordinator of Climate Change and Food Security with the World Intellectual Property Organization. Anja, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. So I'm trying to share my screen. It seems to be working.
Yeah,
okay.
Perfect.
Wonderful. So, well, first of all, I want to thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure always to be with you, and it's been very interesting and inspiring so far. I want to contribute from a different angle in the sense of making a pledge also for for innovation, because I think what Dario said at the beginning sounded rather critical of the role of innovation. And yeah, want to start with a bit of the question of whether slow and innovation are actually contradictory. Because, well, we've heard slow fibers are associated with durability, reduced consumption, and long-term value. And if we think about innovation as fast technology cycles, scaling, mass production, and efficiency through seen through a lens of cost, there is indeed some tension. On the other hand, it's very much about what are actually the goals and priorities when we talk about innovation, because we can also see that in another way, and innovation can actually drive sustainability also, and advance the values of slow fibers in improving durability, quality, reduced consumption. And turning to the work that we've done at WIPO, I work in the climate change and food security unit of WIPO. We had done a publication on assembling innovation and technologies that make a contribution to greening or making the textile production more sustainable. And this cuts across the value chain. I want to highlight a few examples of where there's something happening. So it was already mentioned also that there's the upstream angle, the sort of the resource angle, and we look at renewable fibers. We look at materials derived from agricultural or natural waste. We look at improved cultivation methods. I think there was also in the chat, I saw something about organic cotton versus versus the traditional way of producing. And then at the next stage, there's the processing and manufacturing, where a lot of the negative environmental impact is happening. And what we see in terms of innovation to address that problem is low impact dyeing, cleaner chemistry, reduced water use solutions. In the design and use space, there's solutions that contribute to durability, repairability, traceability, and other digital tools. And at the end of life, we see textile recycling, fiber-to-fiber technologies, and circularity solutions. So what I would say in terms of this question, well, innovation versus slow fibers or versus sustainability, it really depends on what the priorities and the values are that you're trying to put the innovation into service of. One thing that I found a bit, or that surprised me, is that not all of the alternative solutions that are being developed naturally are more beneficial for the environment, which, well, it's a bit, well, disappointing sometimes that some of the solutions actually aren't better in terms of the energy use or the toxicity. So it's not automatically a reduction, but it's something that needs to be looked at carefully and assessed across the value chain. I don't want to talk about intellectual property specifically. I just, again, want to highlight also the role of intellectual property as helping innovators. On the one hand, securing investment and On the other hand, collaborating with other parties to share technology, because that actually gives them a way to control what is happening, and that a certain technology might be actually put to the use that it was intended to. And there are different tools that can be used from that angle, but as I said, that's not the priority of my presentation today. Then I want to just shift again the focus on what we're doing at WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization. Our mandate as an organization is to foster intellectual property systems to help creativity and innovation. And in my team, we've been working now over a decade on seeing how we can help green innovation systems, so both the innovation but also the diffusion of green technology. And we do that by connecting innovators with brands, for instance, in the field of textile production, with brands and manufacturers and other stakeholders who are seeking to transform their value chain. So we want to, obviously there are other factors that play a role. We talked about behavior change and so on. Our angle is the innovation and the technology angle, and we want to help reduce barriers to adoption and uptake of green technologies by spreading innovation and by spreading information about what is available, but also connecting those innovators with those who want to adopt the solutions. So for the work in the textile field, I mentioned that we have screened technologies and solutions. We have done also a publication, but also a collection on our database with those different technologies that can serve as an inspiration for others. And I want to just highlight two, not because of the companies as such, but just as examples. So one is a material from the UK, which has worked a lot on traceable regenerative agriculture, building programs that are quite comprehensive in India, that help sort of foster local community knowledge and practices, and to help teaching about regenerative agriculture, how to improve the soil health and biodiversity, and how to reduce pesticide and fertilizer usage, and also water usage, so that the greenhouse gas emissions footprint can be reduced. And then there's also traceability, using a lot of data points in that. And the second example that is also in our database is a recycling solution from Sweden, Circulose, that again has developed technology to recycle end-of-life cotton textiles and develop raw materials from it. These are just examples. I agree also with what has been said, that we need all the different examples. We have to put this together. There's probably not one single point of entry, but sort of the many stages that need to be addressed. We'll also start a project in China, where we look at textile production and how that can be made more sustainable in Shenzhen in China, and work with producers who will be willing to introduce some of those technologies, where we can then hopefully deploy and create some impact on that. So this is also pledged to collaboration, either to use our database. You find the collection when you use the barcode, and you can reach out to technologies, or you can work with us if you have some challenges that you want to address through uploading a need or through a joint project or innovation call. And so with that, I already thank you for your attention and well, look forward to the rest.
Thank you so much, Anya. We really appreciate the slogan in one of the first slides that slow doesn't mean less innovation at all. I would like to move to our last but definitely not least speaker, Matthias Altmann. He's the value chain traceability lead in the economic cooperation and trade division of UNECE. And because innovation alone is not enough, we need measurable, credible, and transparent data, and this is what he's going to present us today. So Matthias, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello everybody and happy World Environment Day. My name is Matthias Altmann. I lead the work on value chain traceability and transparency at UNECE, the Economic Commission for Europe. The slow fiber movement challenges us to rethink not only what materials we use, but also how we prove the sustainability claims that we make about them. So value chain transparency is what transforms sustainability from a marketing statement into a verifiable claim. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to present today a framework that UNECE has developed to enable value chain transparency through interoperable, verifiable, and trusted traceability of global value chains. We call this framework the United Nations Transparency Protocol, or UNTP. Let me start by explaining the problem that the UNTP aims to solve and how it can transform the way traceability is done in the garment sector and beyond. Next slide, please. So one of the greatest challenges facing sustainable fashion today is credibility. Consumers, regulators, and investors increasingly ask for the evidence behind sustainability claims. Businesses must prove where products come from, how they are made, and that they meet regulatory and ethical standards. As a result, compliance evidence is exploding. Think of all the certificates, audit permits, and disclosures that companies have to provide. And as shown in this slide here, all the data points that need to be actually reported on, the sources that need to be referenced. So the problem is that this evidence is fragmented across organizational silos and hard to verify at scale. This creates major global risks: hidden costs, fraud, counterfeit goods, misleading sustainability claims, and negative environmental and social impacts. Please go to the next slide. Thank you. So what is missing, or actually, well, the problem again is that digital traceability platforms exist that have tried to solve this problem, but many attempt to centralize supply chain data and automate compliance checks. So they face a fundamental limitation. There are thousands of such platforms across different companies, industries, and regions, and no single platform will ever dominate the market. The problem that needs to be addressed is the lack of interoperability between those platforms. For suppliers, this actually creates growing burden. Imagine a cut, make, and trim factory in Bangladesh, for example. It often has dozens of brands who source from it, and each of them asks them for similar sustainability data in different formats, requiring the factory to undergo repeated audits for similar requirements or to respect overlapping sustainability standards. As a result, the cost of compliance for that factory is rising rapidly, without delivering confidence for regulators, buyers, or consumers. So next, actually, here we are. That is the slide I want to, look, actually go to the next. That's the next one is correct. One more, thank you. So the solution is, as I want to explain, is a protocol and not a platform. And that is what the sustainability of it, that is what the United Nations Transparency Protocol is actually doing. It's the first international standard designed to solve the problem of interoperability and trust in global value chains. It's not a platform, it's an interoperability protocol. This means a common language and framework that allows data, evidence, and trust to flow between systems, companies, organizations, and borders. So there are five major building blocks of or elements of this transparency protocol. One is digital product passports, which carry data about products and bulk materials. Then there are digital facility records that carry data about the farm, the mine sites, or the factories that produce those goods. Then there is digital conformity credentials that carry independent assessments of products and facilities. So actually the certificates issued that are behind sustainability claims that companies make. And then there's traceability events that connect products and facilities to model the supply chain. And finally, identity anchors prove the identity of all actors in the value chain. Next slide, please. So UNTP enables evidence like certificates, audit reports, or product data to be digitally structured and verifiable. The data remains with the natural owner, so it's not stored on a central platform. It's with owners like the supplier, the certifier, or public authorities, and it can be discovered and verified through product or identity or product or facility identifier, so a barcode, for example, or an NFRD tag that's on the product and that leads you to the data about that product. There is no central database, as I said, so no single controlling platform. And that actually makes what makes the UNTP so scalable, because you are not limited by any storage limit or whatever of a platform. Instead, indeed, the UNTP connects businesses, governments, certification bodies, and digital platforms into a decentralized, trusted network. So we are actually now at the last stage. If you go please next to the next and last slide. We are at the last stage of developing this standard and have just started a public review of all those specifications, which actually is open for everyone who is interested to join until the 13th of July. And then actually comes a much more probably interesting and also more challenging step, which is the adoption, implementation, and scaling of that standard. So a standard, of course, is only valuable if it's used. So we think of this adoption journey that we have before us as the UNTP. What we developed is like a trunk of a tree, which is the core specifications that we provide for this interoperability framework. And then we will actually apply this to the context of different value chains, agri-food, critical energy transition materials, or also the textile sector. And in each of those sectors, we then have partners, organizations who are active in that sector as standard providers, as implementers of software solution providers. They are in our picture the leaves of the UNTP, and each of those leaves has a corresponding implementation in the roots of the trees. So these implementations can be a standard scheme that digitalizes its conformity catalogs or its indicators, so that it's able to issue its conformity credentials in a digital way, and that allows users to verify those claims that are made against such a credential in a digital way by using the UNTP. So this is a little bit what is now, it's a big, basically a big journey and collaboration exercise with all the actors in the supply chain to work together and help thereby to make sustainability information in global value chains interoperable, verifiable, and trustworthy. And that's what the UNTP can help them to facilitate. So thank you very much, and for the opportunity to present this one product of UNECE as a contribution to global value chains and their sustainability. And with that, back to Paola and your team for the closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthias. A round of applause to you for bringing us to the end of this event, and a round of applause to all the speakers for their contributions, and also to the participants for engaging with comments and questions in the chat. I see the notification keeps popping up on my screen. Thank you also from me to the speakers, and I will give the floor back to Paola so that she can conclude and close the meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all. We only have really 1 minute left, and I don't want to make any long summaries, and I think we are all tired, but I see that many of you remained connected. Thank you so much. This is really, I guess, a sign that you found all the presentations interesting. We have also many comments. We will come back to you. We'll go through them. We'll connect you with Dario, of course, and also for all the other questions, we will try to come back to you as soon as possible. I don't think there's anything else I need to add. I think the message was very clear. We looked at the stats before the meeting. We saw there were many of you from governments, also the private sector, academia, NGOs. So this is really the community we want, because this is an open conversation. And this is one of our events of the United Nations Alliance for Sustainable Fashion. I think the conversation keeps going. This is a bit our function as well. I look forward to the next event that maybe will focus on a different aspect, but I really think that this was a good way of celebrating World Environment Day, because we brought forward a topic that is quite crucial for the environmental, the health of the environmental, the health of environment, and not only. And as you can see, and this was very clear from Dario's presentation, the moment you touch upon one aspect, automatically you have to address all the others, be it health, social aspects, or economic. So this is what it seems not to be very fashionable nowadays, is to talk about sustainable development. Maybe it's an old term, but we like it very much. And we will keep talking about sustainability. So this is goodbye to you. Enjoy the rest of World Environment Day, and hopefully see you at our next appointment, still talking about sustainability of the fashion sector. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.